So here we will going to create border pane root, which would allow us to have regions defined, just like border layout in the Swing package. We have border pane in JavaFX. And to this new root, we have the 5 regions defined. So we can say root dot set top. I can add to the top a label that will read top. Make sure you organize your imports when you're adding a label. Similarly, there is one for each of the 5 regions. So we have top, we have bottom, we have left, we have right, and we have center. So here you have these 5 regions defined: top region, bottom region, left, right, and center. Everybody done with this one so far? Okay. Now if I want, I can make this particular example a little bit more complicated than what it is right now. So the complication that I want to add is, so that is a revision from Java 1, instead of each setter producing an unnamed label, it will rather call a user-defined function written in the same class, which will generate the whole label and will return it back. So as opposed to the label getting produced locally, there'll be a label generating function. That function will be called, it will generate a label, will return back the label, and that label will then be placed within top or center or bottom or left or right. So as opposed to having a local generation, we'll do it in an outside function. So we will going to create some outside functions right here within the same class. These will be all non-static functions because they need to be called from a non-static start method. So we can create these functions like public. They will return an object of type label, so their return type will be label. So I can say get me top label. So for now, I'll say label LDL equals to new label top label, and then I can return this label. So it's a local label that's getting produced and then it's getting returned. But it has a name to it, so it's a named object. Now just to test only one of them, instead of saying new label top, we will say I want to call the function get top label. So that function will going to produce the label for me and will then return the label back to me. So now run this program with only this much change. And you will notice that that's why I call this one top label versus top, so that you can see that the text in the top is now top label and it's not top. So that means this label is actually coming from a function as opposed to getting produced locally as unnamed label object. Now, what is the advantage of doing this? Let's say if my label needs to have any CSS properties added to it or any more complications with it. Instead of me crowding my start, I can do that in that function. And just simply make a call in that function and just return that object back. Okay, so let's try to add some CSS to this top label in the label function. So here, I can say, well, label, I want you to have style. And then I can list my CSS properties here as we learned last time. All CSS properties are FX, border style, oops, dotted, FX, border width, do you guys remember these 4 parameters that I'm using here? 0, 0, 1, 0 for border width. Remember, borders are always done in CSS in a clockwise fashion. So it's the top, right, bottom, left. So this particular border will only going to be at the bottom because it's a top label. Okay, so that's basically all I'm doing with this guy right now. And then I will going to run it. And notice, do you see the label with a bottom border? And it's dotted. Okay, now let's add some more properties to this one. Let's say label dot set preferred size, or let's do preferred height. I want my label's preferred height to be 60. Let's see what change that makes. You probably will notice that your label will going to now stand a little bit taller or higher than was before. It takes a little bit more space than was what was taken before. So you can add a height to your label. Now let's learn about something else before we move forward. I want to use root in this method. Where is root declared? In the start method, correct? So root is local to start method and it's not global. If it's not global, it cannot be seen by any other method but start. So let's say if I move just the definition piece of root, outside the start method like this, and initialize it in the start method. So I move the definition outside, but I keep the initialization inside. By doing so, it becomes global to the class, and all the methods within the class can access it. So I move the definition above the start, and I drop the definition piece from the start, but I kept the initialization, the instantiation piece inside the class. Now, with that in place, let's go down to our label. And in the label, I'm going to now call label dot preferred height property, or sorry, preferred width property. Let me do. And then in this, I want to call a function bind. And now I can access my root properties from within this guy. So now, when I run it, who can tell me what happened here? So now what I'm basically doing here on line number 31 is I'm saying my label, I want your preferred width to be set to the width of your root. Who is the root? The border layout. So I want you to take up the whole width as opposed to taking only as much of the width as your size. Everybody follow that? Root is my border pane. So my border pane has this entire region. But my label only takes up this much space, whatever its size is. Now with this line in place, I'm telling it that instead of taking only the amount of space that you are, your width will going to be equal to the width of the pane in the area that you're placed. So it goes as wide as the actual width. So that's what basically this line does. So you're binding the width property of the label to the width property of the root. Got it, everybody? This far? Okay. Now I want to add some more CSS properties. But let's say, I'll do it here. I want to add FX font weight to be bold. So now when I run it, the font weight is bold as compared to the others. So you can see the difference between the two outputs. The one above is where it is not bold, and the one underneath is where it is bold. Okay, now I want to change the alignment of the label's text, or the label's placement, not the text, the label's placement. So who can help us come up with those properties that we just learned? How do you change the alignment? Which class has all the constants for the alignment in FX? POS. Okay, the position class has all the items. So we're going to position it to the baseline center. So now when you rerun this example, so notice that the top label is actually in the center versus now this you can see the difference between what it was before when we ran it the first time, that's this one, and what it looks like now. So in comparison to first versus now what we have. Okay. Okay. Now let's try to do something similar for the bottom one. So what will you going to do? Let's copy this whole thing and paste it right below. And we're going to call this one get bottom label. And we'll change the label text. What other change should I make, guys? No, here, within the function's body. The bordering I need to change because right now the bordering is set to the bottom. I need to change it to the top. So it will now going to appear top, right, bottom, left, right? So that's one thing I need to take care of. It will going to be as wide as anybody else, which is the size of the pane. The rest of the properties will stay the same. Now we need to go up in the calls, and where I'm saying bottom label, I need to change that to a call to get bottom label. Call that function. And now when I run it, notice my top and the bottom labels versus what they were in our initial run. Okay, we're now going to do it for top. We're now going to do it for left and right. So let's copy this again, and let's copy and paste it 2 times, one for left and one for right. So we're going to do get left label, and then make sure that you change a few things. Number 1, for the left label, instead of preferred height, You need to say, I want the preferred width. And I want my preferred width to be 60, okay? And then you also need to make sure that your preferred height property is bound with the root's height property, because you want to be as high as the root. But is that true? I want to be as high as the root? No. I have two regions to get rid of, because the top and the bottom regions take up the entire width. So I need to subtract that much. So I'll say root dot height property dot, there is a built-in function subtract. Okay, so how much should I subtract? What is the height of the top and the bottom? 60. So I have 2 times 60. Or 120, either way. You know, we'll do it. So just so that you know that 120 is 2 times 60. Oh, okay. Now, yeah, notice this is this is where the left is and this is where the right is, right? Now, if I say left, your height should be the height of the whole pane. It's incorrect. So I need to subtract this much. So that is why for my left to have the whole height, it needs to have the whole height minus this height and that height. Okay? Okay. Now, let's copy and paste the body of get left into get right label. Oh, I need to change one more property, sorry. My FX border. What should be the border for left? The left should have border on the right-hand side. So after that, 0, 1, 0, 0, correct. After that, I'm going to copy and paste for get right label. And then the right will have on the left, the 0, 0, 0, 1. Now I need to make changes to my calls. So instead of calling left and right, I'm going to say I want to get left label, and I want to get right label. And now here you go. I mean, if I need to increase my width a little bit more for my left label and right label to completely show as opposed to its current size. Okay, now let me close it out. And let's do one more thing. Instead of me having to write 60 in all these different places, I would rather come up with a constant. I only use a constant all over my program. That'll be a much better way of doing things. How do you declare constants in Java? Final. Constant is in C# and C++. But here we have constant integer size equals to, let's say, 60. Okay. So now, wherever I have 60, I'll change that to a size. So that way, I can control my size from one location, as opposed to going to so many different places and changing that 60 to a different number. One more benefit I will have is, instead of me having to subtract 120, I'll simply say size times 2. Size times 2, because the size is predefined. Sure. So now when I run it, it gives me the exact same output as before, but now I have changed my sizing through the size constant. Okay, so what I did now here is I changed the preferred width of my left and the right to size times 2. So it becomes larger, and it can now display the whole text, left label and right label. Now we need to take care of the center region. So we're going to copy get right label, and I'm going to paste it underneath. We're going to call this one set center label. Okay, now for the center label, guys, what do you think should be set? Do I need to set the preferred width for the center? No. Okay. What should be the height of the center? Preferred height property. Whatever it is set right now. Which is because remember, center has to make sure that its height subtract the height above and the height below. Okay? And what else should the center consider? Center should consider that I do not need border because the regions around me are bordered. All I need to worry about is my text being bold because it has borders in all 4 direction sides. So now we're going to call the function get center label. And now when I run it, I get a center label right there. So that was my initial output. And you can see the difference between initial versus the final.